love Broadway. Very much. However, I have never been to New York and seen a Broadway show. I've seen tours of Broadway shows, I've seen Broadway actors in regional theater shows, and I've seen quite a bit of community theater, but technically speaking, I've never seen a Broadway show. Except, I've seen a Broadway show. I've watched blurry and shaky recordings of Mean Girls the Musical, Hades Town, Dear Evan Hansen, Once on This Island. Oh God, are you there? The list could go on. All for free and all from the comfort of my own home. I'm talking, of course, about the magical world of Broadway bootlegs. Now, bootlegs are very much illegal, mostly on the account of copyright infringements in U.S. intellectual property law, but ask any Broadway fan if they've watched a bootleg, and the answer will most likely be a resounding yes. While I do believe bootlegs are a very important part of theater culture, I think through pro shots, recordings of Broadway shows can open the world of Broadway to thousands of people who would never get the opportunity otherwise, and eliminate the need for bootlegs to begin with. More on bootlegs, though. Bootlegs and bootleggers, those who record Broadway shows, are a bit of a controversial subject when it comes to Broadway fans. On one hand, they are illegal, and watching them does not directly support those who created and worked on the show. On the other hand, bootlegs don't stop theater fans from going to see a live show and financially supporting the show itself, if they're able to. Oftentimes, a bootleg just gets a person even more interested in seeing it. I, for one, had no interest in many of the musicals I've come to love before I watched the bootleg. The bootleg only made me more interested in seeing the show performed live. A comparison I've often seen made is between bootlegs and sports. Watching a football game on TV would never take the place of going to watch a football game live. If you had the opportunity to see your favorite team play live, you would, even if you could have saved the money and watched the same game at home. Watching football from home doesn't take away from the experience of going to a football game live. It doesn't compare. The same can be said of a Broadway show. Watching a bootleg or a pro shot doesn't mean if given the chance I wouldn't go see the same show live. In fact, I have, multiple times. It is a completely different experience that a recording will never be able to replicate. But a recording can offer a great middle ground between watching it live or just listening to the soundtrack. At least that's my take on it. These recordings provide a means for many fans to see shows they wouldn't have been able to see before, especially young fans who might not be able to go to New York and pay to see a Broadway show. The Broadway League reports that theatergoers are getting younger, with the average age of a Broadway theatergoer being 40 years old and 15% of audience members being under the age of 18 during the 2017-2018 season. The trend is only continuing, with more shows catered to younger audiences like Be More Chill, SpongeBob SquarePants, Mean Girls, amongst others, along with programs that seek to introduce younger people to theater. Broadway is becoming more accessible to people who aren't just old white folks. Charlotte St. Martin, the president of the Broadway League, explained in an article with Deadline that the vast majority of current theatergoers had some connection to theater-going as a child, which is why programs like Kids Night on Broadway, Broadway Bridges, and the Jimmy Awards are so important in encouraging young people to be interested in theater. However, while Broadway is becoming more welcoming to younger folks, that isn't reflected financially. The average ticket price to see a Broadway musical during the 2018-2019 season was $122.73. That may seem feasible for Broadway's previous audience of older white people, but it isn't for the Broadway fans of today who might not be able to afford it, which is how bootlegs come to play a bigger role. Bootlegs introduce more audiences to Broadway and provide a way to watch shows for those who don't have the possibility of going to New York and seeing a Broadway show, yet still fosters that love for theater that encourages younger audiences to go and see shows when they're able to. Of course, bootlegs aren't making any money for Broadway shows and the Broadway League. This is where pro shots could prove to be the happy medium for both sides of the story. A pro shot is a professionally recorded show. Think Hamilton on Disney+, HD quality, multiple angles, the whole shebang. Almost every Broadway show is professionally recorded for archival purposes and kept at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, but very few ever see the light of day. This is mostly due to union issues, copyright, and money factors. However, every once in a while, a pro shot is released theatrically or put onto streaming sites for one reason or another if the producers decide to. The 2016 revival of Falsettos, for example, is a popular musical that was released in movie theaters and gained a significant following with young audiences through that theatrical release. Although Falsettos did have a fairly successful run, so it can be said the theatrical release may have only extended that. The same can be said of the Hamilton Pro Shot. Of course, people will watch that. We know the musical and we love the musical, unless you're Lorelai. Hamilton most likely didn't gain any new fans through the Pro Shot and had the budget to produce a nice recording. On the other hand, with the Pro Shot of Bandstand, a musical that did not have a very successful run, the show was able to make more money and gain a larger following through the theatrical release, leading to a national tour of the show that may not have happened otherwise. If Broadway were to capitalize on the release of Pro Shots, bootlegs would become more and more obsolete, meaning if you wanted to watch a Broadway show, you'd either have to go to Broadway or pay to watch a Pro Shot. The audience for Broadway shows would increase along with Broadway's popularity in general because of this newfound accessibility, especially during a time when Broadway is losing millions of dollars, estimated to possibly be $565 million. Something like the public release of Pro Shots could be a saving grace for Broadway. As of now, Broadway shows have been closed for 8 months with no prospects of opening soon. Thousands of people out of work and millions of dollars being lost. The expected reopening of Broadway shows as of right now would be
into May or early June
of 2021, according to the Broadway League. Pro Shots and large theatrical/streaming releases of popular and unpopular shows alike could create jobs for folks, as well as make quite a bit of money. Broadway has already started doing a little bit of this during the pandemic, with Playbill hosting Playbill Playback, a series in which Playbill offers pro shots of musicals and plays to be rented for a limited amount of time at a low cost that was then donated to the Actors Fund to benefit actors out of work. Doing this with more shows at higher cost, not as much as a Broadway ticket would be, but perhaps somewhere in the middle, could be beneficial for Broadway fans who can't go to Broadway and executives and producers who want to keep their profits up. It is also important to mention the streaming service for Broadway Pro Shots that is already in existence, Broadway HD. Broadway HD is comparable to Netflix or Hulu in the way that you pay a monthly subscription fee of $8.99 to be able to stream a wide variety of Broadway Pro Shots. However, this service is not widely used due to the fact that it has very few well-known shows and does not have very many recent productions. If Broadway made the prospect of renting or streaming Pro Shots more common for all shows, the audience would significantly grow, making Broadway more accessible for people of all backgrounds. This could result in a boom in audiences once Broadway is able to open again. The issue lies with the logistics of the situation. With strict union rules and guidelines, along with copyright issues, it can be hard to make streaming all sorts of Broadway shows possible, not to mention the incredible expense. Charlotte St. Martin explains how to do what Hamilton did would require a real outlay of cash from the producers. It cost around $10 million to film Hamilton, according to one of its producers, Jeffrey Sellers. This is a significant amount of money considering the fact that the production budget of a typical Broadway show, as in a show not at Hamilton's level of popularity, is around $8 to $12 million. That's not taking into account the weekly budget of a show. The risk of losing money for Broadway is simply too high for many shows, and the possibility doesn't seem to be there. However, in a time like now when Broadway has been closed for the longest it's ever been closed, Pro Shots could be the next best bet to help get people engaged with theater again and to offer some sort of profit for a Broadway that is only losing money right now. If a sort of relationship were to be made between streaming services and Broadway shows, and the gap were to be bridged, the costs of filming a Broadway show might significantly decrease. Disney Plus bought the rights to Hamilton for $75 million after all. And both Disney Plus and Hamilton certainly turned a profit since its release. And while the demand for other Broadway shows might not be as high as for Hamilton, the demand is certainly there, and as more shows are released, the demand would only increase. Especially with the state of the world being what it is, the desire for new entertainment is strong. Now would be the perfect opportunity to introduce the world of theater to a new audience through the release of the many Pro Shots in existence right now. Pro Shots could be the perfect way to diminish the need for bootlegs and create some new and necessary change in the theater world. As the world changes and evolves during this pandemic, it's time Broadway does too.